mom. She used to work as a scientist. My mom's full name is Tracy Ann McMahon. Why do we need to know your full name?
You need to know my full name because when I first started working in science, I wasn't married yet. So a lot of papers I'm on, you'll find me by my maiden name.
Where did you work?
When I first graduated from school, I worked at Will Research Laboratories in Ashland, Ohio, and that's when I first started doing research. And then I left there and went to Case Western Reserve and started working in the physiology and biophysics department.
How long did you work there for?
I worked there for 15 years. I started in August 2000 and I left there last year in February 2015.
What kind of research did you do?
When I first started there, we did heart metabolism research, and then we went on to do heart failure research.
What did you do there?
My job involved doing surgeries on animals, collecting samples from the animals, either during surgery or after surgery. And then those samples we would take upstairs into the lab and we would run what are called assays. And those are chemical experiments up in the lab. Some of them had different color changes, which was pretty cool. And then after we ran those experiments, we would analyze the data that we collected, and then we could write a paper off of that.
What was your job title?
My job title there was Research Assistant 4.
Why did you want to work there?
Well, originally, when I went to college, I wanted to be a doctor, but my grades weren't good enough to go to medical school, so my next best option was to work in a lab and do research. So that's why I worked there.
Why did you want to be a scientist?
Well, like I said, I couldn't be a doctor, so the next best thing was to be a scientist, and I always liked science, so it was a good fit.
Did you always want to be a scientist?
I didn't always want to be a scientist, but I always liked science ever since I was a little kid.
What was your favorite thing to do in the lab?
My favorite thing to do in the lab? Well, I like to do the animal surgeries because I was really good at it. But then I like to be upstairs in the lab running the chemical experiments too because those were fun.
Do you have a favorite boss?
Did I have a favorite boss? I did. His name was Dr. William Stanley. He was my first boss at Case, and he left Case like 5 or 6 years after I worked there. He went on to the University of Maryland, and then he went and was the head of the Heart and Vascular Center at the University of Sydney in Australia, which is pretty cool.
What was your favorite animal to work with?
My favorite animal to work with was probably our large animal studies with the pigs. Just because those surgeries were most related to what a human heart would look like.
What kinds of animals did you work with and why?
Well, when I first started working there, when we were doing the heart metabolism experiments, we used large animals. So we used pigs mostly, but we did use other animals that your friends might not be so happy to hear about, but we did use dogs. And then when we moved on to our heart failure models, we used rats and mice. And when you do large animals, hearts are most closely related to a human heart, so that's why we use those. Our small animal studies, you can just do more animals and get more information quicker using those animals, which is why a lot of people choose to use mice and rats.
Why do you use animals in your research?
Why do we use animals in research? Because you aren't going to go and test a drug on a human, so we need some sort of animal model, which is why we use an animal model, that would be closely related to a human. So it's either using animals or using humans, and I think it's a better idea to use animals.
Did you ever feel bad when an animal would die during your research?
Of course I would feel bad when an animal would die. But sometimes the animal had to die in order for us to collect the data that we needed.
What is heart metabolism?
Heart metabolism is how the heart works, how it functions, how it beats, what kind of enzymes it uses. There's a lot of complicated things with heart metabolism. So as you guys get older and learn more about the heart, you'll see there's things that go in, things that go out. So we studied all that kind of stuff.
How many papers was your name on?
I don't know, we'll have to go Google it later to get an exact number, but a lot, I would say at least 60.
We learned in school that there are steps to follow to do an experiment. Did you use the same steps?
Yep. If you're doing research, you use the same steps that you guys learned in school. So always start with a hypothesis. And then from your hypothesis, you go on to make a plan of how you're going to do the experiment, which usually involves making a protocol first. And then once you know what you're going to do, then you can actually do the experiment, and then you can collect your data, and then you can analyze your data, and then you can gather, after your analysis of your data, gather all those results and form a conclusion. And from the conclusion is how we would write our papers. Fun fact. Well, let's see. The fun fact that I learned when you guys started to go to school at St. Raphael's is that the lab I worked in at Case, when I would collect the tissues and send them to this other lab, the person there that would get those tissues and run experiments on them was James Thomas's mom. And so we found that out. And so that was funny to know that we actually worked together at Case, but we never interacted with each other because we had different roles in each of our labs. So that was it. And the one other thing that I forgot to tell you that you wouldn't know to ask me is that I also at Case worked with students. So students who had graduated from college already and who wanted to go on to become the main scientist, they would have to earn their PhD. And so I would help them do that. So a lot of those experiments I ran in the lab was for them to do in order to get their PhD. Do you have any other questions for me?
No.
Okay. Thank you for interviewing me.
Yep, anytime.